Hey guys, this is Sai Kumar Kurtiwada. In this video, we will learn about how to validate our address management system for entire fields in a form and a form group as well as a form array. So to understand how to validate all this, let me quickly jump into Visual Studio Code. Here we have created HTML file and the TS file and also a spec file. Already we have tested few of the scenarios like address adding, address removable, and also we have checked the patch value of a particular addresses. Now what we'll do is we'll try to validate this particular form on clicking on a add or removing the elements or changing the element values. So for that sake, let me go and create one if statement where I will try to validate email not found and also form array values. So now what is our strategy here? We have to update our fixture.detect changes. Once the changes are updated, that means fixture.when stable, then we'll get a callback function. Inside this callback function, what I want to do, just I want to update this email. So if I go top level, so we have a email ID, that means here, and already we have a validation for this email ID which is defined in our TS. If you go to the TS and email, inside the email we have a required and also a pattern. Let me go with the required one. So by default this email is having some value like sai@gmail.com, but what I'll do is just I'll change that values of that particular object. For doing that, I can access this particular email by using email ID, and let me copy this and get this email element which is of type HTML input element equal to fixture.debug element dot native element dot query selector of what is my selector. It's an ID, so hash and email ID. Now you got that email element. Let me change the value of that email element by using value property. Value is equal to empty. And to change this detection and to understand about the events, what we'll do, just I'll dispatch an event over this email element like event, new event of input event. So whenever I dispatch this event, it will try to update our form control. Now fixture dot detect changes and fixture dot when stable, whenever my form control has been updated, then what I should get? I should get an error message. What is that error message? First check is you need to get this particular error message. So let me add one ID is equal to email required. So let me copy this and get this particular element. So const required email element which is of type paragraph. So HTML paragraph element is equal to fixture dot debug element dot native element dot query selector of I want to get an ID with required email required. And what is our expectation here? Expect required element should not be null. That means not to be null. It should not be null. Let me save this. And if you see here, it has been successfully passed. And also one more expectation is expect that required value element dot inner HTML should be equal to the error message whatever we are providing in the field, that is equivalent to this is required. So let me copy this and just paste here and give semicolon. And also one more expectation is expect of whenever this particular element has updated the form control, that form control should update in our register address. That means component instance dot register address dot get of I want to get that email, and inside that we can get the required validation. So for that sake I can use value dot to equal of it should be equal to empty. And one more validation is expect of component instance dot register address dot get of the control name. The control name is email and it should have errors. That errors should not be equal to null dot not to be null. So it should not be equal to null. And even you can find the particular required one. So expect of component instance dot register address dot get of what is that email. And if you have the errors, and you can find whether the required error exists or not. So dot to be truthy. Why? Because required will give you a boolean value. Let me save this. Now here we have validated all the cases for email. In the same way you can do even for name. So that is the same expectations, but the ID and the particular format will change. Now what we will do, let me test the form arrays. So how we will check the form arrays? So as this test case is going big, just I'll make like email not found, and let me write one more test case like it and test form array addresses. So I want to test this, and let me have a callback function. Inside this callback function, what I will do, I'll get the element, any of the element, random element. So for example, already we are passing two objects for this particular address array. Go to the demo part and see here you have already two addresses by default. So what I'll do, any one of the address I'll access, and inside that I'll try to remove that value, and whenever I remove that value, my submit button should disable and this particular element should have one error message. So let's test that. Here let me go to the spec file and let me update the fixture dot detect changes, and once the detect changes are done, let me use one stable dot, then we'll get a callback function. Inside this callback function, let me access that particular elements. How to access the elements of that values? I can access even from the form control or from the HTML content. So now in this case I'll access from the form control itself. So component array dot get, I want to get the group name. The group name is 0, and for that group name I will access a control. That means get of what is my control name. Let me use any of the control name from that form group. So it would be something like a city name, and just copy this city name, paste here, and let me add the value dot set value of empty. Now my address is having a city name, and that city name will be equal to empty. After this, let me update my fixture dot detect changes, and fixture dot when stable. Whenever this is stable, I'll access this dot then, and whenever I'm accessing this dot, then I'll get a callback. Inside this callback, the city name is invalid. That means whole form is invalid. Let's check that. Expect of component instance dot register address dot valid dot to be falsy, or you can use false. Now whenever the city name is in a required state, this is invalid, so the validity is false. Either of the way you can check, either by using a valid property or by invalid property. Whenever you are using an invalid property, try to pass to be truthy. So now save this. We can say that our particular validation has been failed for that particular form. In the same way, you can access any of the element and you can render that data. So this is invalid and it is equal to true. Now one more expectation, like expect of component instance dot, what is my expectation here? The expectation is whenever we are seeing this city name, that city name should be having a validation error called as required. So I can use same thing here. Let me copy this and then paste here, but this time we will not focus on the value, we will focus on the errors, and it should be having errors. So dot not to be null, it should not be null. And the same expectation, but this time we need to have a one more statement called as dot required. It should have a required value, and it should be dot to be truthy. And let me save this. Now all the test cases has been successfully passed. And also one more thing you can check, whenever there is an invalid value, that has to update your submit. Already we have tested in the above test cases. Hope This is good enough for testing our address management by using a form control as well as a form array and a form group. And by this, we have ended our test cases for our address management system. Hope this helps a lot for you regarding the address management system. And in the upcoming videos, we'll target the same type of examples on a particular concept, and then we'll try to test it as well as implement it using Angular. Hope you like my explanation. If you like my video, like, share, subscribe to my channel for more updates. Signing off. Thank you.